Well, everyone, it's time to get your bagpipes out because Stadia is indeed not really, but it may as well be. And well, the main man, Phil Harrison, has essentially got a bit of a demotion.
About time.
What a surprise!
Yeah, damn right. It's that case where, like, you know, it's been out for over 2 years, almost 2.5 years, and no one's talked about it. No one seems to care about it. No one seems to play it outside of, we know, there's like 6,000 people who play Destiny on it, but, you know, it's always just been quietly like ticking along, and no one's cared. And now Google just sort of, by a report, Google have sort of admitted it internally that it, well, not a mistake, it's definitely a substantial failure of a product, and I can't believe it took them 2.5 years to actually, you know, understand that.
Can you imagine a Google product being utterly shit? What a surprise. Any users of Google Docs? Just that thing. Google suck at anything that's consumer facing.
Yeah.
It's pretty much that. They can't handle any of this stuff. It's a miracle that they've not driven this very platform we're all watching right now into the ground. In fact, the main reason why they haven't driven this into the ground is because Google's pretty damn good at algorithms, and they have pretty much made one of the best attention grabbers on planet Earth. So that's probably why YouTube exists. You know, they're so good at the ad sales and all of those googly things, and of course they're pretty good at services too.
Yeah.
But when it comes to something like this, you cannot release something that from a big tech company's perspective is a minimum viable product. You cannot do that to an audience who is used to the output of the entertainment industry.
Yep.
It's pretty damn simple. So after 2 years of us all knowing that it's basically a bit useless, and Google not really admitting that, it actually now seems like they may be stepping away from the beloved household name that is Stadia. Oh, how I will mourn you, Stadia.
You'll be missed.
Yeah, so this is all according to a new report from Business Insider, and they're claiming that Stadia itself has been demoted somewhat, and Stadia's boss has also been demoted, because basically Phil Harrison, he used to report directly to the main guy of hardware.
Yeah, because obviously Stadia was a hardware product.
Yeah.
Because it had the controller, which somehow did all the magic for the low latency, which never really made a bunch of sense, but, you know,
Yeah.
carry on.
So now Phil Harrison, the Stadia boss, is reporting to the VP of subscription services rather than the hardware boss, Rick. So that's, you know, the person he directly reports to is less senior than the person he used to directly report to. Now, in fairness, subscription services are a fairly major thing, you know, for Google. So Stadia, or at least the underlying tech, is in some way still decently serious within them. But overall, this does represent a bit of a diminishing. And we'd actually, finally, other than, you know, several people playing Destiny on Stadia, we actually have some more solid numbers. We can actually understand now the launch performance of Stadia.
Yeah, which was, you know, surprisingly large. Not huge, but surprisingly large.
Yeah. So a little bit for Phil Harrison first, though. So he actually did great work on the PS1.
Yep, seemingly so.
Fair play to him.
The strategy was all him, effectively. Sorry. He was part of the core teams that made the PS1's like hardware strategy and software strategy so strong, and, you know, the way it basically dominated most of Europe pretty handily. That was like the team he was involved with, which, you know, obviously, you know, you think of the marketing for the PS1 in Europe in that time, it was really good. Yeah,
so he did good work there, then moved, ended up being on the PS3 in its earlier days. Since then, things have not been particularly great. So after that, he goes to Infogrames. Odd name for a company, and they're actually they owned Atari.
Yeah, they bought it in 2001.
Yeah, that's quite wild. But it actually fell shortly after he spent 2 years as CEO and then was the non-executive director. Then he moved to Gaikai.
The big cloud service.
Yes. And then he left that after 2 years to join Microsoft's interactive entertainment team. 3 years later, then, he leaves Microsoft. He then joins Google in 2018, and obviously we know that is, you know, that's for Stadia.
Yeah.
Now, we're not actually saying that it's his fault.
No, not at all.
It could very much be the case that he's just been hampered all the way trying to get cloud things off the ground, and it just keeps on not happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's interesting. I saw there's some quote, I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a quote attributed to him fairly early on, like in the, I think it's like before 2010, a couple of years, he was talking about how he thinks people are going to be moving towards, less of the offline single player games and more to the online, community focus and all that stuff. The kind of, same reason he went to join Gaikai in, that was 2008 or so, just because that was the future. So he was fairly ahead of the time there and actually understood. But whatever's happened, Gaikai obviously was like focused on the back end tech stuff. It didn't really manifest as a product. And obviously then that was the one that was, I believe that was picked up by Sony in that era. Then he moved to Microsoft's Interactive Entertainment team, which was, the era there was around 2010, 2012, because he left. I think he left Microsoft in 2015. So he was there for Microsoft's worst. Yeah. And then he joined Google and worked on Stadia, and you're like, either just some rain clouds following him, I think, because he's like, if he'd stayed at Microsoft as an example, Game Pass and Cloud now,
he would have been top dog for Cloud.
Yeah, for sure.
It's unfortunate. Now, according to various Google insiders, he's also basically, Stadia, that's been demoted in the company. And a part of that is because of it just missing targets. So this is where we get into the interesting things. Number one, insiders saying Phil Harrison and other executives set a goal to reach 1 million monthly active users by the end of 2020, which they missed by about 25%. Now, we kind of joked, we're a bit surprised almost that it even hit that much. But yeah, saying the player retention was a huge problem. That is also interesting because, Stadia, it came out as the end of 2019.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so
didn't really come out with a mild splash as opposed to an explosion, which is unfortunate. But
they pushed it really hard.
Yeah,
and as time goes on, they start to bundle it in more things. Yeah, they really are trying.
Yeah, get it with your Chromecast.
That's why I have a Chromecast.
Yeah.
Well, that deal where you could basically just get the free trial or whatever, just a Chromecast would arrive. Mm-hmm. It was crazy, right? So even with all of that, they are not hitting their goals. And while so many companies would be thrilled to have 750k MAUs, obviously for Google, that is not going to be enough.
Yeah. Yeah,
now,
for sure.
According to employees, there apparently are people who still think the likes of, playing Cyberpunk 2077 in your phone, that's going to be a thing. And, they could be right.
They're probably right.
Can be a thing. It just... Microsoft are going to do that. Yeah. That's going to be an xCloud and Game Pass. It's not going to be on Stadia.
Yeah.
Now, from what we understand, however, only around 20% of the focus is now on games. Mm-hmm. And that was basically the thing.
That was a problem.
Google created pretty damn excellent streaming tech.
Yeah.
And perhaps it would have worked better in the States than it would have for us here. But repeatedly, I've heard from people that their Stadia experience was pretty damn good. Now, we had a bit of an iffy experience in this office. I've had also a mixed enough experience with Microsoft. Mm-hmm. In fairness, I think a lot of that's just because games over the cloud, kind of tricky to do.
Yeah.
Now, more recently, I've seen plenty of success with xCloud. Now, to my tastes for the games that I play, unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. But... playing Moonlighter, my girlfriend was happy enough with it, so I guess for some sorts of games, it's grand. The thing there is, think about what a Stadia Pro subscription was. Just thinking about the actual business model of Stadia, that's the bit where it really just makes no sense, and it's where Microsoft comes in and utterly demolishes them in business model.
Yep, which, obviously you think of how much money Microsoft are putting into that business model and, going for... user growth at the cost of, not the cost of revenue, but at the cost of profitability, really, really hard. And then you look at Google, you're like, well, Google have money to do that, but they just clearly didn't have the connections or the institutional will. Like, obviously now it's 20% of the focus is now on games. They clearly had some will, but they didn't want to they didn't go as hard as Microsoft have gone with Game Pass, because obviously Game Pass has the 1-2 punch of it's cloud, but also it's local, so it's for, regular gamers who aren't interested in the cloud will go, oh yeah, sure, that's for me. Whereas in this case, it's just, hey, imagine going up to the publisher going, hello, we would like to put your game on a service that is cloud only. And if you look online, you'll see people claiming it's a pretty mixed experience. Would you like to do that? We'll give you some money, but probably not that much because our budget's relatively low, even though we're Google. It's just, it was never going to work. Like
the business model is one of the most stupid things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And even just for so many people, just the idea of, I own a game on a cloud service, that's not the same as, just for how people actually process games, that's not the same as owning a game in Xbox or a game in PC. And to Google, they'll be saying, well, no, the Stadia platform is the same as Xbox. But that's just not how people see it. And as well, like with, obviously it's different with Game Pass because you don't own the games. But yeah, you can stream the game. And also when you get local hardware, you can download it. It's all in the same thing. Yeah. Stadia could never give you that option.
Yeah, it's like for how people engage with games now, cloud is a backup solution.
Yeah.
Cloud is I'm so addicted to video games, I have to play them on the bus on the way to work. Or I'm so limited in time, I have to do it on the bus to go to work, that sort of stuff. Or, my internet, let's say my internet's down, fuck. That's not going to work, but
you're in a hotel room.
Yeah, my PC crashes, or I'm traveling for business or traveling for whatever else.
Back to your parents' house for Christmas, you didn't bring your big rig.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, that's a pretty good example and kind of relevant to, I think, like loads of people.
Yeah, whereas, you've got Google's attempt, which is, hey, this is only for cloud only, which is going to work all the time because we've planned this from the Google offices, which is incredible internet, and not from rural America or anywhere else in the world. So we forgot about that. But also, it's like, to me, it stood out because they spend so much time positioning it as like the usual model for big tech. Like, this is the early adopter premium stuff. Get in here early. This is exciting tech for you to engage with, but it was never a premium experience. It's the kind of case of it works best as an add-on that people can really enjoy, which is where Game Pass gets it really right.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's okay because there's a plan to salvage it. Because as we said,
Incredible.
Stadia did have some cool tech behind it. Absolutely, there is a thing there.
Yeah, even though, to be fair, they did. I'm not sure if they literally lied about it, but they definitely had some big misleading stuff.
Yes,
that front.
they maybe didn't manage people's expectations great. I mean, I don't know. I haven't played 8K 120 FPS. I know that theoretically it's possible, but big doubt on that. Now, Google have got a plan to salvage it. They're going to salvage brand strength and staying power from lucrative external partnerships. So, Google Stream apparently is the new name for Google Stadia tech, and Google Stream powers a new game on Peloton bikes.
Let's go.
Even interesting with Peloton, they obviously went on their stock price during COVID. With lockdowns and everything, people workout gear. If you were trying to get any workout gear on Amazon, the early days of COVID, you just couldn't. So Peloton did incredibly well. Although recently their stock, the broader market, especially the sort of the growth stocks, the tech sector, it's generally fallen. Peloton slammed particularly hard.
Yeah.
So even Peloton are actually being, a lot of people are sort of thinking, who will buy them? A lot of people saying that Apple might buy them, which I don't particularly believe.
No.
But that in itself, interesting.
Yeah, did they not have that whole big thing where they were basically had DRM for their bikes as well?
Yeah, it's the strange thing. From what I understand, by the way, if you were considering those, the Peloton bikes, they're grand, but they're not the best bikes. But what Peloton does do well is the other things in and around the bike.
Yeah.
But anyway, a part of that is games. So Peloton have announced their intention to launch in-app fitness games. They did that last year, and it seems like Google are actually the partner. Now, this is, I think, a fantastic application of streaming tech.
Yeah.
Fitness and games actually work surprisingly well. Both you and me have worked up a considerable heart rate and sweat playing Beat Saber.
And Ring Fit.
Ring Fit. And certainly any video content of that will never be seen by any of you. Because if you want to look thoroughly ridiculous, just be in your boxer shorts on a very hot summer's day, flailing about the place like an absolute tit in Beat Saber. But it's great. I would actually highly recommend it. Now, beyond that, there are some other companies, including Capcom and Bungie, and they are said to be investigating the service. Now, Bungie investigating the service is, that's kind of interesting. Of course, Destiny
on Stadia did well enough.
Yeah, it was a big major draw for Stadia early on. Also there's something about it that still is funny, Bungie, there's that tie to Microsoft. Now they're owned by Sony using a competing company's cloud service. Capcom as well, apparently. Now Bungie were actually said to be actively exploring developing their own streaming service. Apparently that's something they were looking into before their Sony acquisition.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Destiny runs... I'm not going to say Destiny 2 runs in a toaster, but I remember us thinking that it was pretty damn well optimized.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Launch,
that's for
but
sure.
there you go. Yeah. So overall, it will be interesting to see, but essentially expect Stadia to be this thing called Google Stream that is then licensed to companies.
Yeah, which is obviously going to be, I'm trying to think of who doesn't notably have their own in the works. I can't really think of anyone, but imagine, like a smaller company that doesn't want to go on this, I guess that's the problem, right? This has been hyper specialized for games, but everyone in the games industry who's like a major platform already has their version in the works. So, I mean, obviously, they'll look at Capcom. Maybe Capcom will do something for themselves, but you could see Capcom deciding to partner up with Sony for their PS Now stuff, or Microsoft for xCloud stuff, or Xbox. It's just called Xbox Cloud. I don't know. xCloud is such a great name, and I'm really annoyed that they haven't really ran with it. But
yeah,
you wonder what are they? Who in games is going to want this that don't have their own option ready on the go? I guess that's basically the problem. Maybe Ubisoft, I don't know. But that's where you're going to have to go with your Pelotons. You're going to have to go with all these different applications and shop it around general tech as opposed to shopping it around games. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, they really should have done this at the start. But I guess publishers were more interested in running their own solutions so they could make all the money.
Yeah, and I mean, they have plenty of engineers. That said, I mean, when it comes to streaming tech, a lot of that big shit, you'd imagine Google's would have a bit of an advantage. Yeah. But perhaps when it comes to games, the gaming companies kind of know better.
Yeah. Or Amazon's Luna.
Oh, yeah.
That exists soon.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so did everyone.
So overall, it's not looking great for Stadia, basically. And one of the funny things is the last time that Stadia was in the headlines, it was the Epic versus Apple trial, where Tim Sweeney basically said that he believed it had been very significantly scaled back. That's a quote, and it does seem that Tim was right.
I would assume he knows.
Also a ghastly thing. Imagine calling your users Stadians.
Yeah, it's that was one of the things I think Stadia did technically right. It's a little bit creepy, but they did garner up this cult mentality, and a lot of people who enjoyed Stadia, for us going to the Reddit probably to this day, still shows you're like, I don't know how you've tied your identity to a streaming platform within, before it actually released, but that's quite impressive that they have the ability to do that with their users. Obviously, it's terrible, but they can. And it's like the fact that they use Stadians in like proper communications, because obviously they got kind of out ahead of this a little bit, or not. I think it was time to be like basically an immediate response. If you hear one thing, hear this. The Stadia team's working really hard on a great future for Stadia and cloud gaming. We hope you agree. The proof is in the playing. Blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're offering in 2022. Have a great weekend, Stadians. Yeah.
So it's rough. I mean, there's lots of uses for that tech. Like, I mean, a good example. What if you want to do like beta? Now, this is a bit weird, only for some games, like a beta build of your game, but you don't want it to be data mined. Oh, you could deploy that through Stadia. Same for press copies.
Yeah, well, I guess
that said, you're going to completely nuke the quality of your game.
Yep. And also,
I want to do it that way.
That's already been done. Thought it was through GeForce Now.
Indeed.
Yep.
So basically, it is, it's rough, and it does mean that if you come in there as that early adopter, it's a very high chance you could be sold down the river.
Yep.
By some of these companies. So, for Stadia themselves, they have, some tweets here, and there's also more future goodness coming to Stadia too. Stuff we can't talk about yet, and it just makes you think, all right, well. It kind of sucks for this, for the Stadia community who did get invested in this platform, that now we hear that Google have, really ramped down their investment based on that. Hearing Tim Sweeney say that, Tim Sweeney, he's bound to know.
Yeah, for sure.
He's going to get all the industry scuttlebutt from even just his engineers will have engineer friends at Google. Yeah. Also, Tim Sweeney is an engineer himself. Mm-hmm. So he's probably going to hear everything from all the circles. So, man, Google. I feel, you know what? How much have we used our Stadia, Matt?
We have used it specifically for testing and coverage. I don't think anyone in this building has any interest in using it otherwise.
No, and ultimately, I think for me, it's the selection of games. It was the quality experience that we had. Yeah. More importantly, it was just that flexibility. xCloud is better in every single way.
Yep.
And there is not much that they can do. Plus, so many of the features that actually seemed cool about Stadia, those were just ideas. And I am sure they had little tests for them inside. Yeah. But the whole thing of, you're watching YouTube, and, you're a PC gamer, so maybe you have a controller already connected to your PC, and, you can hit a little button and boom, it streams you into a demo. That could have been cool. Maybe you should have launched with that. maybe your numbers would have been better, because then you could have piggybacked on every single YouTube user having a play video game demo now button on every thing that they on every video they watch that involves a game supported. I mean, they could have done this better. It's just they went minimum viable product, and you cannot do that when you are selling an entertainment platform. People do not want minimum viable entertainment, especially when other people are going to be giving maximal entertainment, as entertainment as good as we can do it. So ultimately, the big tech companies often suck at user experience. I mean, these are companies where often the user is the product. So it should be unsurprising that they really don't do a great job of actually catering to humans at the end of the day. So that's basically that.
Yep,
They're catering to advertisers. They are catering to, not really you and me. I mean, how many changes to the YouTube algorithm? They'll absolutely get more attention and get more user time spent on site. Will they be good for those users? No, they're good for advertisers.
I mean, even the things they want, even the things they want to be good for users aren't always good for users. Like the amount of times the YouTube Studio backend just changes in layout for no apparent reason. Happened this morning.
Oh yeah, the amount of bugs that we get, like even before we live stream over on the Warcraft channel, the whole thing where we've got to log in, log out, log in again, and then change you change the account and it actually logs you into a different account than the one you clicked to, that you clicked on. That's just insane. Even stuff like Google Docs. Why haven't you meaningfully updated that in like a decade? Come on, you're Google.
I imagine Google suffer from the Valve problem of we're going to do what's really cool because we have a load of intrinsically motivated engineers, and we've really, really, got that working super well for them. And just no engineers I'm going to make Google Docs really cool today, because they're probably using good versions of those already that other people have made.
And I think evidently the people who are super into UX design and stuff, maybe they're less at Google. Maybe it's other companies that attract those sorts.
Almost certainly, from my understanding, yeah.
Yeah, so look, there you go. That's Stadia. Look, time's running out. At the very least, there is cool technology. It can have novel applications. I think Google needs to realize, maybe these consumer products are not the thing that they're the best at. I mean, the Pixel phones are pretty decent, even though, a few of them have they've always been great value for the money, with a little asterisk about, in this one, the OLED's not that good, and, all of that jazz that's kind of follow those Google phones. But for so many things, they're kind of good at services. They're good at tools. Stadia or Google Stream, I think it could be a great service. It could be a great tool. Maybe they just need to work out, I mean, if they try to do a desktop streaming tool reusing some of that technology, that could be great.
Chrome Remote Desktop, but better.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that.
Yep.
Maybe even people would pay for that. So I think that's along the lines that we should really see things from Google. Not exactly expect this. And then, of course, we haven't even mentioned the amount of game developers whose time they wasted by, forming up those studios. The studios go away, wasting Jade Raymond's time, all of that stuff. It just goes to show you, Google were never really committed to doing this the right way. They made a bunch of investments in all of the noise and the song and dance of a group that were going all the way. They didn't actually do it. And that's really that for the story. So let us know, will you be mourning Stadia? What do you think is going to go on with it? And I think with that,